Namaskar and welcome to Diplomatic Dispatch, the show that brings you in-depth expert analysis of all the major happenings on the international front. I am your host, Vikas Swarup. In this week's episode, we will discuss the coronation of King Charles III of the United Kingdom and how we expect India-UK relations to fare in his era. On the 6th of May, millions of people across the United Kingdom and beyond celebrated the coronation of King Charles III at Westminster Abbey, with the King becoming the 40th reigning monarch to be crowned there since 1066. Alongside him, Queen Camilla was also crowned as a royal consort. The coronation marks the monarch's ascension to the throne through a tradition of receiving the crown, the chief symbol of regal authority. The Honorable Vice President of India, Shri Jagdeep Dhankar, and his wife, Dr. Sudesh Dhankar, represented India at the historic coronation ceremony, joining an estimated 100 heads of state and government from around the world invited to the crowning of Britain's new monarch. Later, the Vice President joined heads of the Commonwealth countries at a special event hosted by King Charles at Marlborough House in London and exchanged views with Commonwealth leaders on making the institution of the Commonwealth stronger and more focused. He also addressed the members of the Indian community in the United Kingdom and interacted with Indian students. India's historical ties with the UK have transformed over the years into a robust, multifaceted, comprehensive strategic partnership. The two countries are cooperating on everything from climate change and education to vaccines, cybersecurity and defense. There is an ambitious India-UK roadmap 2030 to steer cooperation for the next 10 years. India-UK bilateral trade in both goods and services stood at £25.7 billion during the last financial year, registering an increase of 35.2% from the same period in 2020-21. The UK is the sixth largest inward investor in India with a cumulative equity investment of US $32.82 billion. More significantly, India is now the second largest investor in the UK after the US. There are 900 Indian companies operating in the UK with combined revenues of almost £54.4 billion and employing more than 140,000 people. Last year, India and the UK formally launched the negotiations for a free trade agreement, for which 7 rounds of consultations have already been held. Indian students make up among the largest international student communities in the UK, with more than 120,000 of them studying there. India and the UK signed the Migration and Mobility Partnership Agreement in May 2021 with the intention to address swifter movement of working professionals between the two countries. The UK has a large Indian diaspora of 1.86 million as per the 2021 census, which forms 3.1% of the total population of the UK. In addition, there are about 300,000 NRIs living in the UK. So what next for the India-UK partnership in the era of King Charles? To discuss this, I have with me two outstanding experts. Ambassador Navtej Sarna is an author diplomat who has served as India's envoy to Israel, the UK and the US and has dealt with the UK in many other capacities. Dr. Sheetal Sharma is professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University with specialization in the culture and society of Europe. A very warm welcome to both of you. Let me begin with you, Ambassador Sarna. Now, in a recent article, you described the coronation as an anachronistic, bejeweled distraction. But you also said that much of conservative heartland Britain still needs the idea of the monarchy. So what accounts for its enduring appeal across centuries, and how has it evolved to suit the requirements of the 21st century?
Well, thank you, Vikas. Thank you for getting me here. I think both those little quotations you took from my article, I think both of them are true in their own way. The fact is that the coronation is today being described, it is being criticized as being out of sync, out of time, not it's a soap opera, etc., etc., etc. And much of that actually is, describes the monarchy itself in the 21st century. The fact is that the coronation ceremony itself goes back centuries. It has some very deep roots in the position of the king or queen of the kingdom and its relationship with the church. And that is why you see the major role of the archbishops of York and Canterbury. But of course, today, to bring it in line, you saw changes, and that answers the second part of your question. There was a multi-faith procession. There was the presence of several religious leaders. So that sort of toned down the essentially Christian nature of the ceremony. But on the broader question as to why is there still support for the monarchy, the fact is that there is support, though it is falling. And I think a lot of the can be attributed to Queen Elizabeth II. That for 70 years, she was seen as this pillar of strength, pillar of neutrality, pillar of dignity, and sort of she held the monarchy together. And you could see it that when she passed on, there was this huge outpouring of grief. Now, at that time, the support for the monarchy was 75%. Today, it's about 62%. So it's already falling. And perhaps a lot of it has to do with the individuals of the royal family, not so much as the monarchy itself. So I think that, plus the fact that, it's seen as these are people living the easy, good life at our cost, when Britain is going through this major cost of living crisis. And there were estimates that this coronation itself cost £100 million. So there is that need for that anger against this sort of subsidizing this sort of a life. So I think in the years to come, how well King Charles sort of treads this path, modernizes, for want of a better word, the monarchy, I think its future will depend upon that.
Dr. Sharma, now Ambassador Sarna says that support for the monarchy has been falling. Now, King Charles is not only king of the UK, he is also the monarch and head of state of 14 other sovereign countries, ranging from Australia and Canada to St. Lucia and Papua New Guinea. His predecessor, Queen Elizabeth II, at her peak, ruled over 32 independent countries, but so many of them have since turned to republicanism. So how do you see the future? Will the monarchy sustain amongst those Commonwealth countries that still retain allegiance to the King of Great Britain, or will we see a rise in republican sentiment?
Because there are two dimensions to this particular question. One is a straightforward contrast between democracy, the modern democracy, and monarchy, which is a symbol of tradition. And the second aspect is something which is related to the presence of monarchy as a ceremonial presence, or as a gesture out there, which is showing a tradition and continuity and a legacy. And the second aspect is the relevance of the monarchy. Now let me expand on these 4 points which I just made in the 2 points. One is that UK is a liberal democracy, in which presence of monarchy in the form of a constitutional monarchy is something which is symbolic in nature. It does not have that much effect on the politics. However, why do monarchies continue to exist, and why there is so much of craze about that? Because this is something which is optically very fascinating and attractive. As you know, that whenever there is something which is happening in the monarchy or in the royal family, it becomes a news. And whenever something gets added or deleted, it is also becoming, a $1 million affair. It promotes trade and advertising, and all those things are associated with it. Now, about the other countries which are involved in it, say, for example, you talk about Canada. The presence of the royal family in Canada is symbolic in nature, although of course it's continuing because of the fascination towards monarchy, but it's very symbolic in nature. Although of course the High Commissioner who represents the monarchy there, the royal family there, he is supposed to give assent to the legislations that are passed by the Parliament, but he is not supposed to question them. So it's a kind of symbolic presence which is out there. But if you look at the public in Canada or in Australia or in other several countries wherever they are having this symbolic presence, the acceptance or the the craze towards monarchy is going down. So it might not go immediately. I can't say that, say, in next 10 or 15 years, it would continue to go down. But right now, we are seeing the kind of, contrast between the liberal framework and the traditional framework. And one important thing that you see, that even the royal family members, they are going for conscription. So they are also adjusting and adapting themselves to the need of the modern democratic institutional bureaucratic frameworks, and that is why they have kept themselves relevant, which is very important for the royal family to continue to make their presence felt in the public life.
Very good point. Now, Ambassador Sarna, the UK has been trying to maximize its international partnerships post-Brexit. How do you see post-Brexit Britain? And how has Brexit impacted the UK's relationship with Europe?
Well, it's impacted relations with Europe in a fundamental way, that they are no longer part of the European Union. It's been a rather painful divorce, if I can call it that. And in its wake, Britain wanted to rediscover its global position. The entire rhetoric of Brexit was that we will be free to do what we want. We will not be bound to have agreement with all the other EU countries on every small thing, and we will then go back to our days of glory. As Boris Johnson famously said in 2020 January, that we will rediscover the muscles that we had forgotten, or words to that effect. It's happened to some extent, but not as much as they would have liked. It has happened in the sense that Britain immediately made an outreach to other countries, particularly to India. I think the first visit after announcement of the Brexit decision by Theresa May was to India in November 2016, and other countries, and they've sought to put up new trade deals, etc. But the fact is that in the last 3 or 4 years, Britain has actually underperformed. They've actually become about 4% in economic terms smaller. Now, it's difficult to pick out the reasons, because there was not only Brexit, there was COVID, there was Ukraine, there was the entire supply chain squeeze regarding China. And because of that, there has been a contraction of the economy. But if you sort of equalize all those factors, Britain has underperformed compared to all other G7 countries.
That's true.
And it has actually gone down in terms of investment, etc., in all those places. So in terms of EU also, its trade has suffered. And even in areas which they have gained, where Britain has gained, particularly, say, in fisheries, which was one major factor in the Brexit rhetoric, it's been offset by the fact of lesser exports of seafood to Europe. So I think it is still in the making.
Dr. Sharma, now that the UK is no longer at the table in Brussels, does it mean that Britain risks becoming further detached from the European economy in critical sectors important for the future? And has the Ukraine war, in its own way, brought Britain and Europe closer together?
Because one thing is very important, that despite the fact that UK is not sitting on the table now with other member states in Brussels, but still there is a lot which they share in common. And their divorce, or maybe whatever relationship is left now, whatever we can salvage out of that, is basically governed by 4 very important agreements. Number 1 is EU-UK withdrawal agreement, which talks about hard, soft and other contours of Ireland and Northern Ireland and all that. The second one is about the trade and cooperation. The third one about security, EU-UK security information, and the fourth one is about the safe use of nuclear energy. Now, these are the 4 agreements which almost cover all the aspects of this divorce, whatever we can call that. Now, the second thing is that, as Ambassador Saab was saying, that there are many things which are unsettled right now. It's not that easy that you just one fine day decide to exit, and after withdrawal agreement, there are a number of things like the people, those who are working in European Union, and other issues related to their pension, the payouts, the settlement, and all of them. There are many things which are going to get settled over the next decade. Now, one thing very interesting which you might have noticed, a couple of days back, there was another protest or demonstration in UK about rejoining the EU.
Yes.
I don't know what the how the tide is going to turn in future, but at least there are some, and I always say that on many forums, that the very next day after the June referendum, 2016, if you would have asked people again, they had realized that they have shot themselves in the foot, and now they want to rejoin because of the number of drawbacks that have come, exposed after the exit. Now, Ukraine war has played something very interesting, the kind of ossification of the East and Western Europe that was happening for a long period of time, because the Eastern European countries were wary of the Western European, and Western European were seeing them as eating from the the money that they are pitching in European Union. So there was a kind of ossification of the positions of these two blocs. However, with Russian invasion of Ukraine, the boundaries have blurred. And in fact, it has played an important or significant role in bringing the EU member states together. And what to talk about UK? Because UK has been a part of NATO for a long period of time, and it's called as, somehow reflecting the US foreign policy. So EU cannot right now sustain itself without the security umbrella offered by NATO. And UK is what? A junior brother of USA. So one thing is very important, that as this threat from the eastern border comes, all these people have united, and there is a greater faith.
Ambassador Sarna, now turning to bilateral ties. How do you see the prospects for the India-UK free trade agreement? Why is it needed? And what does it hope to achieve?
Well, as I said, after Brexit, they've been looking further afield. And one of the countries has been India. Of course, Britain has also signed FTAs with Australia, New Zealand post-Brexit, and a digital agreement with Singapore. But I think India is important in terms of the Indo-Pacific tilt that is being seen in the UK's foreign policy. And as you yourself described in the opening, the various ramifications, a good trade already exists between India and the UK, and the FTA is expected to up it very significantly. Also, the fact is that India is seen as becoming a 5 trillion economy, third largest economy in the world, and the UK would very much like to broaden its outreach and its grip on the trade with us. At the same time, India has a huge service industry, and that's the future of expanding the bilateral relationship lies in expanding to a large extent that service industry, as well as easing travel of business and all that. So I think that's sort of the broad lie of the land. They have had 9 rounds of discussions. The last one just ended. And of course, no public details are available, but various economic assessments are that about half the issues have been sorted out. And a number of issues, particularly of market access, remain. Plus, there are broader concerns. I think there are some concerns regarding India's digital bill, digital privatization, data localization issues, tighter patent laws on medicines, which underpin NHS in Britain and so on. But I think what is important is there is a very clear, strong and oft projected commitment from both sides.
Talking about the Indo-Pacific tilt, Dr. Sharma, is it real, and how do you see it playing out?
See, UK has a lot of interest in Indo-Pacific. There are a couple of reasons for that. First, you can start with AUKUS. Because UK, US and Australia, the kind of group that is coming up, there's a lot of stake that UK has in it. And remember, UK is the only partner from European Union in that post-Brexit. So this gives them a sense of, that they are wanted in the international, or they are an important or a significant global actor. Number 2, if you look at the trade, the volume of trade, almost 60% of trade happens in this region. And if we talk just about UK, then UK has almost 250 billion trade happening in this region. So they have an interest in this. And also their maritime presence in some of the countries in the Indo-Pacific region, that makes it more important for them. Now, UK want to project itself as a democratic, liberal, global actor, which talks about peace, stability of the region, safety and security of trade routes and all these things. These are very important. Plus, post-Brexit, one thing is very important for UK, that it has started developing its bilateral relations with a number of countries, and here ASEAN being one of the important player in that. Now, when UK applied for ASEAN, dialogue partner, it got a status of dialogue partner, in the ASEAN forum. So this is very important, that how UK galvanizes or cashes upon its relationship or bilaterals with number of countries here, which are East Asian economies, and they're very significant for UK in terms of expanding expanding its financial services, its legal services, which UK is famous for. So there is a scope for expansion of many of the services which UK specializes in this area, and also dependence upon India. Of course, India is an important factor there. So that is why this Indo-Pacific tilt is very important, where UK has couple of aims. One is to establish itself as a secure actor. Number two, as a global actor. Number three, when we talk about Indo-Pacific, China is obviously coming into the scene. And this is very interesting that UK wants to have good relations with India and other neighboring countries. So how UK is going to balance this? Although, of course, there is an Indo-Pacific tilt, but no matter whosoever says what, China is almost, unavoidable in all these things.
Now, Prime Minister Modi has expended a great deal of personal effort in the India-UK partnership. Which are the sectors you think where this partnership can make a real difference?
Because the list is very long. In fact,
so just give us the highlights.
The highlights in the sense of economic relationship, trade, in which number of rounds of FTAs happened, but it has to see the day of light. Number two, the political legacy on the historical links that we have. Number three is, as I just said, about the financial and the legal service. And number four is cyber security, defense cooperation, in which we also have, UK supplying some certain components to HAL and other companies, and for aircrafts and helicopters, which are very important for our defense security. Then you have education, innovation. Just now we saw the Serum Institute of India and AstraZeneca coming together. So there's a lot of scope in n number of areas, and along with that there's a people's bridge that has been highlighted so many times, and we were seeing that almost 2 million people of Indian origin there, and this gives a very vibrant and a very dynamic touch to India-UK relationship. No matter we might be having very good bilaterals with number of European countries or even American or Asian countries, but what lies very significant and distinct in India-UK relationship is something which is highlighted in many ways, and diaspora is one of the very important link in creating that vibrancy in this relationship. So we have our potential, which lies very much underutilized. I would say 20 billion USD is nothing as compared to the kind of diaspora that is living there, the historical relationships that we have. So we need to exploit that underutilized potential of trade and the other cultural areas of collaboration, and the future is very bright for both of them.
Speaking of diaspora, Ambassador Sarna, now, Khalistani extremism in the UK has become a major irritant in bilateral ties. We all saw the rampant vandalism that happened at the Indian High Commission in London by Khalistan supporters. What must the UK do to curb such elements?
Well, if you're talking about the exact situation that unfortunately occurred, the vandalism of the Indian tricolour and the High Commission's premises, I think that has to be condemned in the strongest terms. And I think it is under international diplomatic conventions, it's the duty of the host state to make sure that the foreign government's embassy, high commission is inviolable and safe and is allowed to function. So I think there have to be some local arrangements which are better done. People are, if they're allowed to come up too close, then this sort of thing will happen. And I even think since my time there, that road now has become two-way. So there is even far more, openness and proximity to that. But I think, and for that I must say that the High Commissioner of UK even yesterday made remarks that I would have been as angry if it had happened here. So, that is, I think there is an understanding there which has to be built upon and locked in to ensure that the physical proximity of any particular demonstrations, allowing for freedom of speech, etc., do not harm the High Commission. Majority of the Sikh community which doesn't want to be associated with extremism. So, this is still, but I think the point that is being made, essential point which needs to be understood, is that the Khalistani fringe is really a fringe. This tail should not be allowed to wag the dog. The UK government has to act upon the fringe in view not letting the fringe, in the name of freedom of speech or whatever, spoil an entire bilateral relationship which we have done. And a role there has to be played honestly by our own community. The majority of the community which does not believe in extremism should stand up and speak against it. And the majority of the community in India, or in the entire Sikh community in India, which does not believe in this concept, should speak against it.
Dr. Sharma, now the Indian diaspora in the UK has been involved in politics for many years. The House of Commons currently boasts 16 members of Indian origin, and the House of Lords has 23 peers of Indian origin. The Prime Minister of Britain, Mr. Rishi Sunak himself, is a person of Indian origin. What role can the diaspora play, the positive role that the diaspora can play in the UK's partnership with India?
One thing very interesting, Vikas, once again, since Rishi Sunak took over Prime Ministership, we have to cruise between hope and hype. It is not that somebody of Indian origin, if he comes and becomes the Prime Minister, there would be something, everything, you know, red carpet rolled out and all that. It's very interesting that, yes, Indian diaspora is playing a very important role, which in terms of, we have to see that they are the people, those who have settled there for generations together. So they go with a different kind of interest, and they are part of the soil, their culture, their everyday life reflects the British way of life. One thing very good, that they are representing the interest of the Indians over there, no matter these are NRIs or PIOs, whatever the case may be, but one is they are representing. Number two, with a person and lot many people, those who are of Indian origin sitting in the parliament, that gives an added advantage for representation and also have good bilateral relations. How does it happen? Like Rishi Sunak was saying, that it's not just one-way relationship, that we are a satellite to a big state or a big power, yesteryears, but then it's also something which is a two-way process, and in which UK has a lot to learn from India. How do you learn from India? You learn by sending your students also here and understand about the value system, because he has understanding of the nuances of Indian culture, Indian values, and the kind of tradition that we have. The third important thing, the factor which is important, is that when you talk about the challenges that India is facing, say transition to green technology or climate change or development, smart cities and everything, whatever the mission of the present government are, you tend to see them with a compassion in the sense that you relate to them. It's not something which you don't understand, you are distant, difficult and different to understand. No, you have a sense of relative understanding of the issues that pertain to India, and then whatever kind of policies you make, they are very more cooperative, accommodative of your needs and interests. So this is why it's very important that if you have people in position of power who are legislating, or even the Prime Minister, they have a sense of cooperation, a greater degree of collaboration, and this is much more than the lip service that you do.
Well, on that note, we have to bring this discussion to a close. Thank you very much, both of you, for your participation. It is clear from what our two panelists have told us that the institution of the monarchy in Great Britain is not fading away anytime soon, and India-UK ties will continue to strengthen and deepen under the reign of King Charles. That is all I have for you in this edition of Diplomatic Dispatch. Thank you for watching. Till we meet again, take care and goodbye.